Great. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to talk to the composer and commissioning artist of our next piece. I selected Only Kindness by Catherine Dalton after seeing it online and in the J.W. Pepper catalog, and was really compelled by the poem first and foremost. And Catherine, I guess I'll start with you. I would love for you to share a bit about how you connected with this text, and then how the composition and collaboration came with Karen.
Yeah, when I first heard Naomi read this poem at a university here in Minnesota at St. Kate's, and I was blown away, and wanted to set it to music. And uh, just a bit of a story. I had gotten permission to set it, and talked to Karen about it, and Corvoce was on board to premiere it. So, and which was going to happen in March and got canceled due to COVID, but very exciting. It's an intense text, and I like that about it. It takes us on a journey of the soul. So it's very sad, but the thing about Naomi's texts is that they're also incredibly hopeful at the end. She always, always, always has hopeful poems. And that just mirrors the kind of compositions that I like to do, and the text that I like to set. So it made sense to me. And it's wonderful as a composer to be able to um, uh, use those texts in a musical setting, and so that you're able to bring that emotion to life, because the composition is a new form. It's a new art form. It's the text and music together. And so I like texts that can really have some meat to them, and this one does. And the beginning of the music, there's these silences and these rests and these pauses that really make us think, and then the end is very hopeful.
Absolutely, and I see that in the music. So then it's one thing to create a piece that connects this language together. How does Karen come into play?
Do you want me to answer for Karen? Karen,
Sure. Yeah,
go
go ahead.
So, well, we had been planning to do a concert centered around this poem, and Catherine's piece became obviously available when she was moved by the same spirit as I was in this poem. So um, that's how we got involved with that.
So that's some months ago, and then of course COVID came. You were doing a concert this March where you'd premiere the piece, and of course, due to COVID, there was no premiere. Uh, as you continue to hope for that day when you can perform it again, um, perhaps I'll start with Karen. Are you finding that the text is evolving in how your singers relate to it or how you see it? And then I'll ask Catherine the same thing.
We've had a number of conversations with our singers about that exact thing, and it's happened twice here in the cities, particularly um, with so our feelings and how we were experiencing this text due to COVID, and what we were seeing in terms of first responders and medical workers, healthcare workers, all of the people, and then our own desires in families to just really take care of one another. That's what we had really, really been seeing that, and then putting that together with this poem. Um, Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. And I think we all had that sense of loss after we couldn't do the premiere. And so it took on kind of a deeper meaning because of that, as people were, and still are, wrestling with the difficulty of not singing together in this art form in particular, being, kind of on that feeling more dangerous to do, right? Or risky, I guess, for us to do. So that was happening, and we had decided to really ask Naomi, the poet herself, about what she thought about that. Catherine and I had a meeting with her and talked about how that was for her, and had a good conversation. And that's something that I'm hoping that we'll be able to incorporate into the premiere when we actually do it, are her thoughts. But that was the Friday before George Floyd was killed here in the Twin Cities. And that experience, it's been very emotional for a lot of people, and for our singers, feeling the full weight of that event. This poem, when I started to be grabbed by it, I was looking for something to express what I was feeling was a horrible situation at the border, with families and separations, and the real suffering that is happening there. And in order to do that, I think you need to take somebody on what Catherine used the word like journey. This poem does that, and it goes from, it always talks about before you actually can understand, you must go through these things. You must have an experience. You must have conversion of some kind, right? In your mind, in your heart. Before you can understand the situations of our brothers and sisters anywhere, who are different from us, we need to have that kind of conversion experience that Naomi talks about in this poem. And that has been how it's just emerged with new understanding, to meet the current moment. And I think that speaks to the strength of Naomi's poetry and her writing. And then Catherine's piece, as she has beautifully set this music, there's some special parts in it for me that I remember rehearsing with our choir and just loving. The fact at the very end where it's talking about, then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore, only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. And it is only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, it is I. And the way she sets that is so, I hear it that way as I even read Naomi's poem, that it is I, in her way that she set that. It has a joyful connotation to it. And I loved that about her setting, that it didn't only bring us to the despairing part,
Yeah.
Of what can be our experience. So it's beautifully done.
I can relate to that as a conductor myself. When I see what a composer, how they have set the text, being able to say, yes, I can guide my singers to express it that way. And Catherine, I suppose I turn to you with the question of, you're set with the text. What's part of your process? How do you relate to taking those words and then making a musical expression of them?
Good question. You know, Naomi, what happened with this text is she was on a trip. She was on a bus trip from the north of South America to the south, and their bus got stopped by bandits, and this man was pulled out of the truck of the bus and shot in front of her. And she sat down on a rock with a pen and a paper and wrote this poem at that time. And I knew that story about how it had gotten written, and so I sat on that rock with Naomi, and I thought, how did this come out? How did this poem come to her? And that helped me to write the poem. So I sit with words, and I sit at the piano, and I just let the text speak to me, and the melody comes out of my fingers, and then I try to grab it and write it down. And I'm still old-fashioned. I write it down on pencil and paper, sitting at my piano, and I'll play around with the melody until I get it right. But I just I tried to embody Naomi's actual writing of that text. And to pick up on the George, we talked a lot about COVID when that happened, but when George Floyd was killed, you know, you must see that he could be you. That's exactly Naomi's text. You could see that this man was just out in front of her, could be you. And until you can do that, I mean, that is when you find kindness. And I kept thinking of all the protesters in Minneapolis and around the world, and I thought, that's kindness. That's kindness, to get out there on the street, because it's not easy to protest. And we were out there, my family and I were out there helping with supplies, and we were in a couple of protests and helped clean up down on Lake Street after the riots. And so my work is also in the streets. So this isn't the first time I've protested, and and I was up at Standing Rock, and I was there during some other protests in Minneapolis. So my writing also comes from my experience and my daily experience. And if I can't write about it unless I'm willing to go do it. I don't, I have to be there. And so that's a part of it too.
The things you've shared with me as composer and commissioning artist and choral conductor, I think really confirm the spirit that I felt when I first previewed the piece, and have really, I think, brought to life one of the reasons that I hope many of my colleagues, especially in this time, take a look at your piece, Catherine, to share. And we understand that we will not have an opportunity to perform it until, Karen, you'll be performing it as its premiere. So not only do I thank you for presenting this to us now, but I'm excited to hear when the premiere happens, so the rest of us can also dig into the music too. I'm going to leave it there and encourage everybody else to go to the J.W. Pepper ePrint Go app if you want to take a look at the score, and keep checking the rest of our playlist to see some other suggestions here. Thanks so much, Catherine and Karen.
Harley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.